The following is a presentation of the St. Louis Chess Club.
That before. No. Wow, thank you so much for the subs there. And thank you to the St. Louis Archbishops for playing the best chess of the weekend and ultimately winning the Pro Chess League Championship, helping to bring the title back to the chess capital of the world.
A world championship, right? Back in St. Louis where it belongs. Your 2019 Pro Chess League champions. We're going to give them their medals. Let's give them one more round of applause here. Good morning. Welcome to the 2020 Pro Chess League Final Four. My name is International Arbiter Michael J. Kummer, manager of the St. Louis Archbishops. Today at 9:45 a.m., we will be facing the China Pandas. Our lineup today is definitely the A team. Fabiano Caruana, the second highest rated player in the world. And guess what? Magnus is not competing in this event. So that bodes well for us. Board 2 is the revered Leinier Dominguez. Board 3, get this, Board 3 is 2020 MVP of the Pro Chess League, Wesley So. Board 4 is Super GM Jeffery Xiong, who had quite a battle with Magnus at the Clutch Chess event. What are we playing for? The winning team of the Final Four will earn $20,000, gold medals, and of course, bragging rights for life. The St. Louis Archbishops has accumulated much hardware and accolades in the Pro Chess League. In the first season, 2017, we were the world champions. In 2018, the finals were played in San Francisco, and we took home the bronze. In 2019, we went right back there to San Fran with a whole new starting squad, the Young Guns, and won gold again. Also in 2019, the Archbishops won the fun new Summer Series event. We just win, win, win. So let's take a look at the format. We are playing the China Pandas in the semifinal. If we win, we'll advance to the championship on Sunday morning versus either Armenia or Canada. So it's 4 players per team and all play all, meaning our board 1, Fabiano, will play China's board 1, board 2, board 3, and board 4. So each player plays 4 games total, equaling 16 games for the match. We'll need 8.5 to clinch the match and advance. In case of a tie, it goes to the gauntlet with faster time controls and elimination style. But the time control for each game is game 10 plus 2-second increment, meaning every time a player makes a move, receives a bonus 2 seconds. The Archbishops are favored in 11 of the games today, and great news, if it's close, we are the favorites in all 4 games in the final round. So it should be a doozy. Here's Grandmaster Dennis Burrow with the call. Welcome to the party, pal!
Thanks, Mike. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me for this wonderful occasion of the resuming Pro Chess League. Originally, this was supposed to be in Norway in May. However, due to the pandemic, it turned out not to happen. But it's back and it's online. And this time, St. Louis Archbishops is going to face none other than the Chinese Pandas. So let's take a look at their results. The St. Louis Archbishops actually have a perfect score with 8-0, just demolishing the field and actually just playing 8 rounds, while the Pandas actually played an extra round. And as you can see, it was fair routing, an easy one. So we can see the players, originally Le Quang Liem and Alejandro Ramirez and Benjamin Book, and of course Verjan Akobian was part of the team, but only 4 can join for the finals, and they chose, and Mr. Mike Kummer chose Wesley So, Fabiano Caruana, Dominguez, and Fabi. Did I miss someone? I might have. I don't know. So it's Fabi, Dominguez, Wesley So, and Jeffery Xiong. So let's take a look at the Pandas. They actually had a much more arduous road to the finals. They actually scored 6-3, 3 losses, which is surprising as They're formidable and solid players, headlined by Liren, Wang Yue, Li Chao, and Yu Yangyi. Actually not as tricky as of a player field that they had previously. They had young female prodigies play for them, but this time they went all in for a traditional lineup. So let's take a look at the pairings between the two teams. So Li Chao is going to play Fabiano Caruana, Wei Yi, Leinier Dominguez. Actually, that's something that I'm eagerly awaiting, as Wei Yi is more of the fire of chess, and Leinier is the cold, calculating, but very solid play. That is kind of staple, Leinier. Wesley So, Yu Yangyi. Actually, that's also a big rivalry, although I expect Wesley to do really well this whole event, as he just won the Blitz Championship at the St. Louis tournament, tying with none other than Magnus Carlsen. Jeffery Xiong versus Liren. That's going to be a difficult battle. Possibly the only board where I feel that the St. Louis team is outnumbered by rating points. Liren has 2791 and Jeffery Xiong 2709. But Jeffery has desire to outdo all the Chinese players, and all in all, I feel that even though this will be a close match, this should be easily won by the Archbishops. So let's take a look at the format, if we can. Yep, a general format. So teams are playing from 4 continents. This is going to be an online event. Even though originally they wanted to hold it in Norway, they were forced to bring it back online. 24 teams will compete in the 2020 PCL season, along with 7 of the top 10 players in the world. You can see most of them in this round, with people like Liren, Wang Hao, and Wang Yue, and of course the whole St. Louis Archbishop squad. Time control is 10-2-2, seconds increment, and head-to-head matches. 10 points for winning a match and 1 for each game won. The final 4 teams will compete in a live final, and that's the thing that has been cancelled. So they're not going to have that, they're going to have it online. However, in case of a tie, this will be a different format from the usual things that you've seen. It's going to be a ladder format. So board 4 is going to play board 4. And from then on up, they're going to go up there. The loser of that game is replaced by board 3 of the team. So if board 4 wins, it's going to face board 3, then 2, then 1. And as long as the whole team is eliminated, then that team is out. So both layers are eliminated on a draw, with the only exception that if the match between both teams' first board is drawn, they continue to play with colors reversed until they finally have a winner. So the first game will start with opposite colors from the match, and the colors will reverse each game. The time counter is 3 minutes, start time with a 1 second increment. So let's see if we have some games up. Let me refresh. So how do we follow the players? You can actually use the follow. Oh, let me find it right there. Can't I go there? Right here. You can hit follow. And just choose the player you want to follow. I'll give you just one example. So Daniil Dubov, if you want to follow Daniil Dubov, you just hit follow, so /follow duels, that's Daniil Dubov, hit enter, and you are following. If you want to unfollow and you don't want to be bothered by that anymore, you just hit unfollow and hit the same name. and now you no longer follow that game and it won't pop up. But if you hit the follow, it actually works out. Anytime Wesley, Jeffery, Caruana, or Dominguez will have a game on and you are still following, it'll pop up immediately on the side. So it would pop up on the side of the board. Let's say if you have 2 games on the side, that would pop up. But okay, let me step on back. I can do it again. Follow. And it is obviously on chess.com. You can't follow Dubov, he's not online possibly, but you can definitely follow. Oh, let me go back. And let's see. Let's see if we have games. We have no games yet.
Should be about 3.5 minutes.
3.5 minutes left till those games. Let's see. So here's the regular season standings. So the St. Louis Archbishops dominated the Western Division. And as you can see, the Chinese team has barely made it in their own group. That's kind of not surprising with a 6-3 score, 6 being the wins and 3 for the losses. And just on a personal note, I myself has played for quite a few teams. Part of them was Chicago Wind. I did not play in this season, but it is somewhat heartbreaking for me to see Chicago Wind just barely not making it to the top 4 finishers in the Western Division, just being edged out by the New York Marshals. Now, the Eastern Division was a tough fight, but we have players. So we see Dominguez. The only player we're missing is Jeffery in the up left corner. But they all seem to be ready. And as far as I know, Caruana is straight from Germany playing this match for the Archbishops. Sipping, is that an orange juice? Apple juice. Looked very fruity to me. He's savoring it. And probably he's going to savor this moment for a long time. Just noticing it, all of our players are bespeckled. I wonder if Jeffery will also rock a black glass as well. Probably so. Okay, we're looking at Wesley's camera. So no CAD cam yet. We see the mic, a pen, but sadly no CAD yet. But hopefully, if my intel is correct, we might see a chess-loving cat show up, and that would be great news. But until then, we're going to be waiting for the round to start. Is Jeffery in the camera yet?
His dad is.
Oh, his dad is. So we've got a quick substitute. Wei Xiong is taking substitution. He's substituting Jeffery, possibly giving a pep talk to the whole team. And as I can see, Caruana is intently listening. No. He's getting distracted. Takes another sip. So all of the players seem to be well adjusted and ready. And as you can see, we are going to have a match between the Archbishops versus the Pandas. On the other side of the bracket, the Chess Bras are facing the Armenian Eagles, with Canada Chess Bras kind of being the favorites, but you never can underestimate the Armenian team, as they have what really matters, and that is team spirit. Now, if the Archbishops win today, then you're going to see the team play on Sunday in the finals. And if they happen to lose to the Pandas, which will hopefully not happen, they'll play a third place match on Saturday, on September the 26th. And in both cases, it'll be broadcast here in the St. Louis Chess Club's studio. So whichever match they will play, the finals or the third place match, make sure to tune in for that one as well. We've got a lot on the line here because 20K for first place, 10K for second, third is 6K, and fourth place is 4K. So a win is actually quite a leap forward. 10K or 20K is not like 6K. So possibly we're going to see a grueling struggle in these quarters, these matches, because the prices are just much, much higher for second and, of course, first place. So let's see what we have. No big matchups, just a casual match over here between a Czech Grandmaster and a Brazilian one. So I hear that they're troubleshooting some connection issues, and possibly after that will be fixed, then the games will start. So while we're waiting, let's take a quick peek at this game. So even though White has the bishop pair, which is of a positive, it's a close position, and oftentimes this could face knight g3 ideas, hitting both that rook and that bishop. So even though White is somewhat more organized, Black has very many good options. Either knight g3 or knight f4 is an idea. Rook g3 is somewhat surprising. Rook g3, probably if it captures, you take with the knight and put pressure on that bishop. You could even consider taking with the pawn with the hopes of actually getting a knight on f4. Bishop f1 looks a tad bit passive. I guess bishop e7 makes sense, just defending the pawn, sort of preparing ideas such as bishop g5, because as long as this bishop is gone, Black will be able to plant a knight on f4 and press on this h3 guy. Bishop f2, and knowing the style of these players, knight f4 or d5. d5, interesting. d5 is an aggressive move, and I don't quite like it because it opens up this bishop. Obviously, Soupy's idea is to sacrifice the exchange and then roam on in on the dark squares. But the Czech Grandmaster doesn't really budge and says, I do not care. And if you don't want to take it, well, I exchange off your bishop on f2. Takes. B takes. And Black is clearly better, has firm control of the center. Good center control. This f4 square is just going to get occupied. There's some pressure on h3. Oh, actually, rook wasn't quite hanging because of this bishop b5 check, and rook takes g1. So always some tactics to keep in mind. King e7, bringing in some more pieces. Rook b8, rook h2, and you can see the piece domination actually works in Black's favor. And a position can't really be that good if you're going back and forth with your rook. And now Black is in cruise control, although down to 24 seconds versus 35. Rook takes f3, and this is dead lost for White with these pieces being crippled and just can't move. Rook f2, and after the b2 pawn is falling, it's game over. However, it's 20 seconds for Soupy versus 24, so if the Czech Grandmaster somehow survives long enough, he might be able to play for the good old Flagaroo. Rook e1 check, check, and probably it's time to capture. Does not capture. Rook d8, just putting pressure. 13 to 10 seconds. That's actually getting quite steep. Bishop g4, rook f4. h3 is very strong with this rook f3 idea. You can't capture, it's a taboo. Bishop e2. But 5 seconds left for Supi. That's not a whole bunch. Takes, check, g7. And black flags. Wow, that's heartbreaking. So let's take a look at Lord Dilidan versus Michael Royce. If you do not know, Lord Dilidan is actually Richard Rapport. So here he does have a very, very strong bishop. That is Royce, putting pressure on the d4 pawn. And with every dragon bishops, you get a good chance of holding. Bishop takes d4. That always invites ideas of pinning. But in that case, there's always e5. King g7. And from a practical perspective, this is much more comfortable for black. Queen c3, that's actually very interesting. Saying that this is going to be a strong passer, but I think black is in due time just to block off this pawn, and then black has the majority on this side of the board.
Well, it started in about 10 seconds.
And round, as I hear, will start around in 10 seconds. So king c6 would make sense, or running with these pawns. f5, e5, g5. I don't like g5 actually. The more you exchange, the more likely you would hold the draw. Now this might actually become a runner. But they have infinite time to calculate. King c6, opposition, very much important in the endgames. a3, king d6. And slowly but surely, black is seems to be taking over. All right, so we've got games. So let's start with Caruana facing off here. Wesley, Jeffery, and this game. So let's go back to this game. Rotate the board. So we are going to see the be-hated opening of the London. Everybody hates the London for good reason. Bishop g3 was played. Castles, this is the main line. Now I wonder if Fabi goes for b6, bishop a6. The main issue in these positions is the c8 bishop, and Fabi does play b6. You could play bishop a6 or play a5. In both cases, the same idea. He actually goes for bishop b7. That's actually very interesting. Probably he's going for the knight e4, knight f5 play. The whole plan is to kind of smother the view of this bishop. So he's facing Li Chao. Li Chao, very talented Chinese grandmaster. I think they've played before, especially in Norway. So knight e4 is played by Fabi, the whole plan. So either you go ahead and exchange your bishop with bishop a6, or you play Stonewall style, play knight e4 and f5 later. Now, the only concern I would have if I play f5, if white can play knight e5 or not. So maybe Caruana can play knight d7 first and then prepare this pawn push with f5. It's actually a well-tried system. I've seen this being played by Hammer and Vichy Anand as black. While they're thinking, let's take a look at Wesley's game. Wesley, who's been doing really good in the Blitz section of the St. Louis Rapid and Blitz. Let's see how he's doing. So it was a Petrov, one of the Tabiyas that they love to play. Takes d4 d3. So he's actually not going for the main line, d4. He's going for d3, g6. Oh, bishop b5 check. Curious little idea. Bishop g7, queen e2. There, takes, castles. So Wesley seems to be in prime shape, and I can tell you why he played bishop b5 check. So if you don't play bishop b5 check, this pawn is well guarded, and there's no weaknesses there. But after c6, bishop d3, castles, takes, this d pawn no longer has protection, so Yu Yangyi will have to waste time with rook d8, king f8, bishop f4, and black will always have to tend for that weak spot. So black can play d5, but in that case, there'll be many weaknesses on the dark squares. So one of the plans that Wesley could have in mind is something like knight d2, knight c4, putting pressure on the d6 square. However, if you play knight d2, you do have to consider something like knight h5. So knight d2, knight h5 is something that you have to deal with. So Wesley plays h3. So in case of knight h5, he can always tuck that bishop away. Knight d5. So the point could be bishop h2, knight b4, trying to fork. That's why Wesley goes bishop d2, a5. So Yu Yangyi kind of plans to be very aggressive in case of c4, hitting the bishop in that way. So maybe a3 is one of the ideas, just preparing c4. And we sort of have an Alekhine sort of structure with a weak d6 pawn, which I would think is an advantage for white. Not a big one, but something durable, as there's a target on d6 and white has more pawns in the center. Now let's take a look what's going on in Jeffery's game. So start off, this was a queen c2 Nimzo. Takes, the main line. So far as I can see, the tactic is Jeffery is going to neutralize or at least go for some solid options versus the Chinese team, while the other players are going at it. Bishop f1, king f1, rook b1. This is still main line. The king looks awkward on f1, but after king e2, surprisingly, it's very difficult to get close to that king. The long-term idea of this whole line is to go for an endgame, and in that case, this king will be very close to these weakened c5 and a7 pawns. Rook d5, rook c1, knight e5, takes, b4. But with every exchange, the likeliness of a draw rises. In fact, c takes, a takes, queen b5. A draw is very much on the cards. However, cb, rook takes b4 could be something that Jeffery is planning, and in that case, there's no queen b5 check. Notice that this rook is sneakily defending that b5 square, so actually c takes b4 does come to mind. Last but not least, let's take a look at this game between Dominguez and Wei Yi. And as expected, Wei Yi goes for the main line. Dominguez chose the Berlin. This is actually the Berlin main line, which we haven't seen so far that much because everybody and their mother played d3 these days. But okay, h3, h6. Now h6 is a rare line. Usually everybody goes king e8, bishop e7 and h5, but Dominguez chooses h6 instead. Rook d1, knight c3, knight e7, and this is the old line played in the famous World Championship match between Kasparov and Kramnik, played in London. Knight g6, a5. So white is going for this a4, a5 move just to cramp black, making sure there are no b6 breaks and there are no fianchetto ideas with b6, bishop b7. Bishop e7, bishop e3, bishop d7. But as far as I can see, Leinier doesn't seem to be bothered. Knight e4, trying to plant either a knight or a bishop on c5. Goes bishop f5, trying to target the c2 pawn and hitting this knight. Here comes the big question though, whether white can give up the pawn or not. Actually, knight g3 would make sense, and in case of taking rook c1, and if you move the bishop, let's say to b3, I can go a6 and try to break up your structure. Goes rook a4, just defend it laterally. b5 still doesn't seem to be working too much. You just take, and then you have a target on the a file. If I look at this, this does look a little bit better for white, with this king somewhat stranded in the center, and with no real active play for black. So then he goes for this maneuvering idea of knight f8, knight e6, trying to reorganize. Sometimes you want to play rook d8, but it doesn't really work now because you could even consider taking on a7. So I'd say that Wei Yi is putting a little bit of a pressure on Dominguez. I would even consider something like g4, just asking where that bishop is going. If there's some exchanges on e4, then no longer are there any threats on c2. g4, bishop h7. Then comes actually the question how to continue there. And actually that's kind of the difficult part with the Berlin. It's not that easy to come up with plans. Knight f8, e6 is sort of an easy plan, and then maybe go a6, rook d8 later. But for white, it's not as trivial to come up with an idea. He does go g4. And I think that the humble bishop h7 might be the best, and then just go knight e6 after that. It's still not clear for me that I don't know if white is having any straight ideas yet. Maybe rook d3, rook b3 could be an idea. Just go ahead and attack the b7 pawn. As you never have rook b8, I will have the a7 pawn under attack. So one of the things that Wei Yi could go and do is rook d3, rook b3. So maybe in this sense, moving away the bishop is not such a great idea. Maybe bishop d7 is better. So in case of rook d3, knight e6, you have something like bishop c8. It looks awkward, but maybe it's tenable. But with bishop h7, I'm kind of worried with ideas of rook d3 and rook b3, and that could be an issue. He goes knight e1 instead and goes for f4 and f5, which is also quite annoying. So seeing that, it would make sense to go f6, just try to break it up and go for f5 breaks. And that's actually kind of the appeal of the Berlin for the black players. They want to activate these bishops, and if that happens, white can actually run into trouble himself. But let's take a look what's going on in the game between Fabiano and Chao. So we did leave it off with knight e4, castle, knight d7. So he's actually avoiding the f5 stonewall play. a4, knight takes, h takes, c5. So Fabiano is saying, I will have the bishop pair, and you don't really have any play for it. Queen b1, trying to put pressure on the king side with this battery. g6, e4, cd, cd. And you can see that Fabiano with the bishops is trying to open up the position. Interestingly enough, he doesn't take on e4, but plays bishop b4 instead. e5, rook c8, rook d1, f5, which is sort of a strange decision. I think f6 might have been a little bit more interesting. Maybe he was afraid of bishop h6 and repetition there. So he went for f5, knight f1, queen e7. But all in all, it's a comfortable position with the bishop pair. Knight b8, just maneuvering the knight to a better square. Rook takes, queen d1, knight c6. And this knight is actually getting rerouted towards the c4 square. Rook c1, knight a5, knight e3, takes, bishop c6. Whoops, another target. Queen c2, queen d8. And we arrived at this position. I would say that black is more or less comfortable. There's a target to play against, and what white is sort of lacking is a target. Bishop e7. Now the question is what white can do. Possibly some idea of knight e1, knight d3 with b4 breaks could be on the cards, and that could be annoying. b3, bishop d7. So sort of they're kind of maneuvering around about, and it's not quite clear. Probably he will want to play knight c6. Actually, a queen exchange would be great for Fabiano. Maybe something like queen f8 and go knight b4. Just exchange off that knight, or even bishop a4. And that's kind of the interesting question. He goes knight b8. He's chasing the bishop away, probably preparing ideas such as queen c8. Just go queen c8, exchange of the queens, and then just hold comfortably. Now, black still has this bishop, but after bishop a6, black would get rid of it. So he goes knight c6. I would have preferred bishop a6. Yes, your knight would be a little bit uncomfortable on a6. However, I don't know about the usefulness of that bishop. But knight d3 actually gives the option of bishop a6, which I don't think Fabi will miss. He goes knight a5, knight c1. Now, bishop g5 would force f4, because any knight move would mean that this pawn on b3 is dropping. I guess Fabi is saying that my position is not worse at all. You have a weakness on b3, and maybe if he could start pushing with g5, g4, h5, then he could even try to press for more. And as I heard and as we anticipated, the Jeffery game has ended in a draw. But let's go back to this featured game. h4, just exchanging of that pawn. I guess g3 is coming again, so there will be no bishop g5. Bishop e7, king d2. So the problem in this position, it is very hard to find a plan for either side. It's defended, and you have no ways of exerting even more pressure. One of the ideas would be to get this bishop off the board. Oh, king c3, that's a smart idea. So probably Li Chao is preparing to play b4 and then start rolling on the queen side. Bishop d7, sort of eyeing that. Knight d3. Now, you might consider b5, but the problem is that would give away the c5 square. g5, g4, fixing the pawn. f4. Well, that can become dangerous, because if Li Chao can reroute those knights to h3 and f3, the g5 pawn will be sort of weakened. Probably that's the idea of knight e1 here. Anyways, he just wants to get that knight to h3 and f3. Now, black has, oh, king d8. I don't like that move because it actually goes to the wrong side of the board. Knight f3, bishop e8, bishop d3, again not letting that bishop out. And I'm kind of anticipating this plan to actually materialize. And that doesn't look good. Maybe first he should go b4, b5, just chasing this knight away. Yep, b4, b5, and then going for this plan. This doesn't look good. Maybe a5, just in time, before Li Chao could organize, yes. So if you play b5, I go knight b4, exchange of that one pair of knights, and then you no longer have enough pieces to target the the g5 pawn. Knight b4. The question is if knight e1 is possible. Knight b8. Avoiding that. Okay. This could be another plan. Possibly Fabi is preparing this idea of knight d7, knight f8, and bishop g6. Because if he manages to exchange this bishop, he will be comfortably able to post a knight on h7, and the only weakness in his position will be exchanged off. So as far as I can see, Fabi is still wondering. Yep, he's going knight d7, king d2, knight f8, bishop g6 is prepared. So this should be more or less defensible for Fabiano. He just needs to post a king on g6 and it's a dead draw. I wonder if he can go for a quick exchange there. He avoids that. Bishop g6. Captures, captures, knight f3. Knight h8, knight f7, and the game is going to be drawn because there is no way of breaking through. And the game did end in a draw. So it's 1-1. Let's take a look what's going on in this game. So we left it off earlier around here. a3, b5, c4. And that minimal space advantage and these pawn weaknesses, we're going to tell. Knight c3, knight c7 takes d5. You should be pushing in the center while you can. Knight c3, rook e2. And this is a typical position that Wesley really likes. He has a little bit of an advantage on this, on the queen side. But let's see if it's enough. Knight a4. Rook a8, knight b6, rook b5, knight f6, rook b7, check. So even though he has pressure on the queen side, it is not quite clear yet, as Yu Yangyi can go ahead and play king e6, g5, and f4, trying to gain some space there. But if black goes king e6, oftentimes you can switch gears, Wesley, and go rook g7 and try to win some pawns on the king side instead. The only issue for white is in that case that black could go rook c6 and try to conjure up some play on the queen side. Let's say rook g7, rook b6 check takes. He's going for the pawn. It's actually very logical, and if he manages to organize that, should be very close to winning. But again, here comes Yu Yangyi's counterplay. g5, knight takes, 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 f4, and the question is if Yu Yangyi will be able to sacrifice the knight for these pawns on a3 and b2. And my hunch tells me that it is quite likely to be the case. These pawns are way too advanced. King c4 and just stopping these pawns. Knight c5. I would assume f4 is on the cards, yes. gf, gf. Yu Yangyi has 17 seconds versus Wesley's 1 minute 45. But I think this position is fairly straightforward enough. e3 takes. So he's trying to keep as many pawns as possible. King e2. But in that case, probably knight h5, and you would win that pawn. He goes knight d5. So just a side note, taking on b4 wouldn't actually save the day because there's still a g-pawn for Wesley. So let's see. Knight d5. Maneuvering the knight would make sense. Knight e4, trying to win the pawn, g4, knight d6, but then king b3, king a3, and this knight is actually holding up the b pawn. This looks very close to a draw. So let's see the other critical game between Dominguez and Wei Yi. an extra pawn for white, but some technical difficulties with both sides having very little time left. Also, this knight is actually controlling some important squares, and it's not so easy to get close to the f-pawn. So even though Dominguez is down a pawn, it's not quite clear. He's going for king g3, f4, that is Wei Yi, but rook h6 is a very nice little move, stopping this f4 break. And if f4 break comes, you can just take and just go rook takes f6, rook h3. And Wei Yi is going desperately down to 6 seconds. 6 seconds. And I'm looking at this position. Soon enough, we might run into some threefolds. That's why c4 was played, because he was worried himself. Rook h1, it's a strong move by Wei Yi. But the question is if there is a fortress or not. So the king will walk all the way to the other side. Actually, no, he's going knight f8. There, let's see what's going on here. This ended in a draw, as expected. So let's stick here, because this is the last critical game with all games drawn. King e4, knight d7, bishop c3, knight takes f6, and that is that a draw? I think so, that should be drawn. King e4, knight f6, and this should end up in a repetition, because there's just not enough weaknesses. Knight b8, there's still some targets there, but I don't know, f6, and bishop e3. Okay, this is actually getting very annoying, because now the king can come on in. Bishop d2, king f7, bishop c3, king e7. King f7, and so far he's been holding. Bishop d2. Can he go knight e5 and go for the f-pawn? Not now, because in this case there's bishop takes c5, bishop g3, knight f8, and suddenly the knight might actually become powerful. Bishop d6, knight e6, a very nice maneuver by Leinier. King e4, and the king will shuffle around. So I don't think that black is in danger anymore. There, king e7. And here comes the big question, whether it's time for Leinier to get more aggressive. But I think Leinier knows that he should be just patient and wait for anything to happen. I think Wei Yi is going to acquiesce to a draw in this scenario. Bishop e3, and we're just going to see some king shuffling. Unless he goes for b4, but it doesn't really change the situation, because this knight on e6 controls all these break-in squares. King e4, bit more of shuffling. Bishop b2. King g6 probably was setting up some king f5 ideas, so that was stopped. King f7, bishop b2. And I think it is a matter of time till they agree to a draw. Nothing really is happening. Bishop a1, a cheeky little move, avoiding the threefold, but it is still a complete draw. So, a fairly solid round. Fabiano made an easy draw. Wesley was actually pushing versus Yu Yangyi, so that could have been a chance to take the advantage, and finally this game ended in a draw. And as predicted, this will be a tough match with the Chinese players holding off all four boards. Wesley So had some chances to win. Not that his position was completely winning, but it looked very promising. Caruana held a slightly worse position. Jeffery's game was a very simple draw, although Dominguez had to struggle a little bit to get a draw in the end. In fact, let's take a bit of a look at this game because we did not get the chance to look at it. We left it off around here. Knight f8, g4, bishop h7, and Wei Yi played knight e1, but I kind of assume you could go rook d3 and rook b3, and in most cases you would be able to defend this guy on b7, but not in this scenario. Oh, did I just... Alright, let me reload this game. I will refresh. Did I manage to refresh it well? Okay, that game is gone, sadly. Then we're going to take a look at this one between Chao and Caruana. So it was a regular boring London, e6, e3, castle, knight d2, b6. The best move, but I definitely understand this idea. You are trying to activate this terrible bishop on c8, c3, bishop b7, bishop d3, knight e4, castles, knight d7, knight takes, c5, and black can hardly be much worse with the bishop pair, even though the position is rather closed. Queen b1, and I think it really has to do with this being a team event. Fabi might have considered playing f5 here, getting a good old stonewall structure, and have this maneuver of knight f6, knight e4, just centralizing, and you might even hammer down the board with g5, g4 as a typical position and ideas from the stonewall. Now b4 could be a move here, but in this case c4 is very nice. Bishop c2, knight f6, and after knight e4 you go with g5, g4, and with this bishop still alive, this actually gives some good play for black. But knowing that, he goes for g6, which again, for some reason, doesn't show for me. So again, I apologize, I have to refresh it. Yeah, so here, knight e4 takes f5 was an idea, but g6 was played instead. But I think that has to do with this being a team tournament. He's not going all out for a win. He's just being solid. And also, the point of that is just to reduce the scope of this bishop on d3. e4, cd, cd. And to be honest with you, I did not understand why he didn't take on e4 or something like e5. e5 is an interesting idea, trying to open it up for the bishops. There's nothing wrong with bishop b4, but I just find it a bit more logical to open up the position when you have the bishop pair. Anyways, bishop b4 is still very much solid. e5, rook c8, rook d1, f5, knight f1. And this position, as you can see, is around even. However, black will be a little bit worse due to this bishop being passive on b7. Queen e7, rook c1, knight b8, sort of planning this maneuver of knight b8, knight c6, knight a5, also eyeing this idea of bishop a6. Rook takes, queen d1, knight c6, rook c1, knight a5, knight e3. Why does the computer suddenly feel that white is better? It is really due to the space advantage that white has. The space advantage is quite big, and that bishop on b7 is a little bit awkward. So black does need to be a little bit careful here. Knight e3, takes, bishop c6, queen c6, bishop a6, and probably suggesting ideas such as g4, trying to blast it open on the king side, and probably something that black Black should have been kind of avoiding, or should have been avoiding. But with both sides kind of playing it safe, and plays bishop a6, g4 would have been putting more pressure on, but bishop a6 is a good logical move. Bishop e7, b3, bishop d7, queen c3, knight c6, knight c2, knight b8, queen c8. Again, just going for a solid game. But as you can see, Black has plenty of moves and ways of playing this position. There's no need for queen c8, but queen c8 actually reduces the tension. Takes, knight e1, knight c6, knight d3. And again, this was the moment I was illuminating during the game. Bishop a6 is one of those ideas that could work. Like with bishop a6, you could pressure on d3 and on e2. And with this bishop gone off the board, this would be an easy equality. And after that, it was quite simple. Black closed off the position, and even though the computer says it's a big advantage for white, it's nothing substantial if you can't win the g5 pawn. Bishop g6, knight h8, knight f7, and the game was agreed to a draw. So now we're going to take a short little break, and then we'll be back with the games.
Welcome to the chess capital of the United States. The St. Louis Chess Campus, in the heart of the vibrant Central West End, has established itself as a premier global destination for chess and is comprised of two unique nonprofit institutions. The Chess Club and Scholastic Center of St. Louis is recognized as the top chess facility in the world and plays host to all major tournaments, including the U.S. Chess Championships and the Sinkfield Cup, one of the strongest chess tournaments globally. Tournaments are broadcast online to more than 150 countries, led by an expert commentary team of grandmasters. The Chess Club is an educational organization committed to promoting the game of chess, with a specific focus on bringing the benefits of chess to children throughout the St. Louis area. Research shows children who play chess exhibit improved analytical skills and increased confidence. The Chess Club is highly engaged with the local community, bringing scholastic chess programs to more than 100 schools, providing hundreds of classes each week. Directly across the street from the Chess Club is the World Chess Hall of Fame. This one-of-a-kind cultural institution invites visitors to experience chess in imaginative ways and is home to the U.S. and World Chess Halls of Fame. Cutting-edge exhibitions feature rare, historic chess artifacts paired with world-class art. Innovative programming explores the intersection of chess, art, and culture. Visitors can enjoy interactive programs designed around the exhibitions and monthly music in the galleries. The World Chess Hall of Fame is nothing you expect and everything you love. 3 different galleries and a premier gift shop highlight the culture, history, and creativity behind the game. Come visit, play chess, leave enriched. To learn more about the St. Louis Chess Campus, visit stlchesscampus.org.
St. Louis University is celebrating its 200th anniversary. Offering world-class education in the heart of St. Louis, SLU attracts students and professors from around the globe. In 2015, SLU partnered with the St. Louis Chess Club to start a top-tiered collegiate chess team. On the very first year of the team's inception, SLU obtained second best university at the Pan American Intercollegiate Chess Championships. Higher purpose, greater good. St. Louis University.
Welcome to the chess capital of the United States. The St. Louis Chess Campus in the heart of the vibrant Central West End has established itself as a premier global destination for chess and is comprised of two unique nonprofit institutions. The Chess Club and Scholastic Center of St. Louis is recognized as the top chess facility in the world and plays host to all major tournaments, including the U.S. Chess Championships and the Sinkfield Cup, one of the strongest chess tournaments globally. Tournaments are broadcast online to more than 150 countries, led by an expert commentary team of grandmasters. The Chess Club is an educational organization committed to promoting the game of chess, with a specific focus on bringing the benefits of chess to children throughout the St. Louis area. Research shows children who play chess exhibit improved analytical skills and increased confidence. The Chess Club is highly engaged with the local community, bringing scholastic chess programs to more than 100 schools, providing hundreds of classes each week. Directly across the street from the Chess Club is the World Chess Hall of Fame. This one-of-a-kind cultural institution invites visitors to experience chess in imaginative ways and is home to the U.S. and World Chess Halls of Fame. Cutting-edge exhibitions feature rare, historic chess artifacts paired with world-class art. Innovative programming explores the intersection of chess, art, and culture. Visitors can enjoy interactive programs designed around the exhibitions and monthly music.
Hello and welcome back. So we already have the games started with Fabi immediately facing off with Wei Yi, and we have the moves in. So we see the good old e4, e5 advanced variation of the French. So the French being the big craze these days, which is sort of surprising as we actually talked about it in the previous game when Fabi was black. He was struggling with that bishop on c8, yet here Wei Yi voluntarily gets that bishop on c8 and enjoys it too. So a3, this is still the main line. b4 is the main move here, and I would assume that that's what Fabiano will do, or bishop e2, but that doesn't really make that much sense. As far as I know, b4 is the main line, c takes, or even c4. This is still a main line. Fabiano seems to be avoiding the main lines. He usually plays e4, e4, d4, d5, knight c3, so more of Fischer's style. This advanced variation is a rare guest in modern practice, actually. Now, older times I've seen bishop e3 played, bishop b2 is the other one, bishop d2 is the main line, but I've seen a bishop e3 being played and actually is quite venomous. He goes for the third option, plays bishop e2. Now, black usually doesn't have too much space in the advanced variation. However, in these type of positions, f6 makes a lot of sense, and black can hope for some counterplay that way. Bishop e2, you could go f6, or go knight e7, knight f5, hitting on d4. It usually leads to rather tense positions, something like knight e7, castles, knight f5. You've got to defend the d4 pawn with bishop b2. So knight e7, castles, knight f5, bishop b2, and f6. And it's going to be a mess in the center, with black trying to undermine Fabiano's center and Wei Yi. Wei Yi will be the one trying to undermine the center, and Caruana is going to try to hold it together. But let's take a look around the other boards as we're going to see Ding Liren facing off against Wesley. Let's rotate. This looks like a casual and normal English opening. Ding Liren's favorite. Bishop c5 is actually a Fabiano line. First played by Grishuk, then played by Galfond, and later on played in the match between Carlsen and Caruana. Castles, castles, d3. The whole point is you put pressure on that king, and white doesn't have the luxury of ever getting a bishop on e3, which would be possible with the bishop on e7 and not on c5. Rook e8, bishop g5, just provoking some weaknesses. Takes, takes. f6, provocation successful. f6 is always a little bit of a concession. You do create weaknesses along the diagonal. On the g8, a2 diagonal. However, it does bolster this e5 pawn. Bishop c1, a peculiar choice, rerouting the bishop to b2. Bishop e6, bishop b2, bishop b6 at d4. So even though white has an extra, white doesn't have an extra pawn in the center, but has more support there. Once Wesley organizes, he should be fine. Bishop d5 is actually eyeing against this bishop on g2, trying to make sure that that bishop won't get too powerful, and also stopping e4 advances. If e4 d5 would have arrived on the board, that would have been a problem. Bishop d5. Another silent threat of Wesley's is to take on f3 and gobble the pawn up on d4. And that's not necessarily the best choice, but it is something that Ding will have to deal with. And that in mind, I think e3 is a move that Ding could play. But after, let's say, something like, even knight a5 comes to mind, just trying to put a knight on c4 and play c6. Black should be more or less okay here. So let's take a look around. Let's see how Leinier does against Li Chao. So it was the a6 line of the Sicilian, not one of the main lines, but of a sidelines favored by none other than Morozevich. c4, knight c6, d4, takes, takes, e5. And this is sort of like a Kalashnikov mix with the O'Kelly, where you do not have that knight b5 idea as an option. Knight f5. So if you can't say A, you might as well see B. Same idea, you want to plant a knight on d6, and if they don't allow you, you might reroute yourself to d5. d5, anyways, cd, takes, takes, knight d4. So black will get very active play for the lack of the bishop. And even though white does have the bishop pair, black is active currently. Knight c3, bishop g5, bishop takes, takes, bishop d3, g6, castles, gf. Now, white has an extra pawn, probably could have taken on g6, but didn't want to activate black's pieces even a bit more. So castled instead, king safety first, knight e2, takes, takes, queen d7. And we get this Sveshnikov type of position. The question is, how good is this for black? And queen f3 is a good spot by Leinier, because this e4 fork, even though looks attractive, isn't quite that good, because I would just capture, f takes, and this bishop is hanging. Now f4 is a sign that something has gone terribly wrong for black. Not only does Leinier have a strong d5 passer, there's no pawns in front of it, he has a much stronger bishop on d3 than this guy on f6. Castling isn't even possible because I go queen h5 and you get checkmated on h7. In fact, let's stay with this game because this might be the first decisive game of this whole match. Bishop g7. I would even consider going queen h5. Yes, you might be able to capture my d-pawn, but that would come at a price of opening up this king's position, because this d-pawn, even though is a menace, it does block off the d-file for white. So I think queen h5 makes a lot of sense, stopping you from castling, because that would be just checkmate. Queen d5, rook d1, queen e6, and even after that you can swarm on in. Dominguez decided to go rook d1, which is a logical and very principled way of playing. Possibly after castles, he would go d6 immediately, because the pawn would be taboo. Anytime you take on d6, there's bishop h7, and suddenly you lose your queen. But if I can get d6 in scot-free, then rook c7 will be on the line, and I think that would be more or less lost for black. Queen d6, Li Chao noticing that that would be decisive, goes queen d6. However, this kind of allows queen g4, not only hitting this bishop, but allowing rook c8 to check, which does look very annoying for black. Possibly bishop f6 is the best move that you could do, rook c8, king e7, and pray that there is no decisive blow in that position. Bishop f6, and funnily enough, you can do the reverse Bobby Fischer there and take on h7. So bishop f6, bishop takes h7. You can't quite take my bishop because I have queen g8 check, and I can decide whether I want to take that rook on a8 or h7. So that's why you remember all the classics out there, so you can use them. Bishop takes h2 was a classic idea by Bobby, and here just the same. You can do the same move. Bishop f6, bishop h7, just in a mirrored position with white. In that case, white would be up a pawn with a raging attack. So I kind of anticipate this move to happen. Not that rook c8 is necessarily a bad move, but after king e7, I do not see the extra benefits of playing rook c8. Now, one thing for sure is a good sign for Li Chao. He has an opposite colored bishop position, so if in the long run he manages to survive this attack of Leinier's, then there's hope for him to survive with the opposite colored bishop endgames. Rook c2, sort of, again, trying to double. Rook d8, and I still think bishop h7 is over there, but it's kind of being avoided by both sides. None of them seem to care. Probably they were scared that there'll be some counterplay on the h-file. Bishop e4, still a strong move, just over defending the d5 pawn and preparing the doubling. The hard part for here in this position for black is that you don't really have any play. So you can go ahead, play king e7, rook d7, and just hold the fort, but that's about all you can do. You are condemned to wait. So we'll come back to this one as we look at the game between Jeffery Xiong and Yu Yangyi. So another position with the bishop pair versus the two knights. We got a typical Karpov variation. Bishop e7, bishop f6, rook d1, knight e4, knight c6. Even though black has the bishop pair, white has more space. And if white manages to break through with d5, Jeffery might run into some trouble. In this position, I think Yu Yangyi is either considering bishop a6 or d5. Bishop a6 also makes sense because it would deprive Jeffery from the bishop pair and also would put some pressure on the knight on c6. Bishop a6 takes, queen takes. You can't quite capture this d-pawn because of tactical tricks. In fact, I feel that bishop a6 is more annoying than d5. d5, I possibly can capture bishop takes d5. Even that I'm not sure. He did go for bishop a6, and I think this is quite strong. Jeffery's under some heavy pressure in this position. Okay, takes, queen takes. Possibly the best scenario is to reroute the knight to d5. And even in that case, I think white is better. It's not that it's not survivable. So I guess takes, knight b4 and knight d5. Just putting that knight to d5 and chill. I would assume something like queen a4 will happen, knight d5, and something on the lines of knight e5, trying to get a knight to c6. Yeah, queen a4, knight d5, knight e5. And white has an advantage. Not a decisive one, but something that is difficult to play against. Black is definitely having a position that's defendable, but I do definitely would rather be white than black. All right, let's go back to the FIDE game. We left it off over here. Knight f5, bishop b2, bishop e7. So he went for quick castling instead. Knight a5, a typical idea. If ba, you can take on b2. So that will never happen. Knight d2, just stopping that knight from intruding. Takes, queen c3. And here comes the blockading. Castles, knight d2. And you can never really take this pawn because you always run into this x-ray trouble with b5 and you lose a piece at least. Bishop f3, bishop c6, takes, b5. A very nice little move by Fabiano. He is cutting off the support and wants to encircle this pawn. Later, a4, queen d5, rook d1, rook d8, knight f3, h5. Again, stopping this g4 move, which is typical in these French positions, and maybe hinting at something like g5, g4, trying to win the d4 pawn. So Wei Yi has 2 minutes versus Fabi's 3:41. Bishop c1, actually stopping that, and maybe planning to play bishop g5 himself, as this h5 move did sort of weaken the structure. a6, trying to undermine the position. I guess exchanging will happen. ba, and something like bishop g5 is interesting. However, that might actually lose a pawn, so you wouldn't want that. b6 is an option. Rook d7, a5. It just goes rook b1. I don't quite like rook b1 because it sort of steps into tactical tricks such as queen e4. And after queen e4, rook d7, suddenly there's lots of pieces eyeing the d4 pawn. Queen e4 was played. Queen e4. However, it does run into something like bishop g5, exchanging, and in this case, the queen will be under attack. Bishop e3, just bolstering the center. So all in all, as far as I can see, this round seems to be going the Chinese Pandas way so far. Wei Yi has a little bit better position, while Dominguez is better near winning, with the game between Wesley So, Liren, and Jeffery is still up and pending. I do feel that this doesn't look that good for the archbishops so far. A5, rook d8, a little bit of stuttering from Wei Yi. I did not quite get what he was doing, so it might actually be a problem. Meanwhile, the game between Wesley So and Liren ended in a draw. Knight takes e3, f takes e3. And even though these pawns look weakened, it's kind of difficult to come close with this bishop. At least it would take lots of time to get to h6. It will take 1, 2, 3 moves, g6, bishop f8, bishop h6, to actually undermine that e3 pawn. And even then, Fabi can just play king f2 and just chill. And again, that's why you shouldn't really dilly-dally that much. You're actually going to face some troubles on b7. And last but not least, Fabiano has 2 minutes 20 seconds versus Wei Yi's 30 seconds. Knight d2, chasing the queen away. However, it does allow potential bishop g5 ideas that might give some counterplay. The position is still very much complicated. You wouldn't really be able to go e4 because bishop g5, knight f3, queen g3. And as I can see, Dominguez did win his game. So let's just look what happened. Rook d8, bishop e4, king f8, rook c1. As predicted, he doubled up on the c file. Rook g8, queen h3, setting up some nasty little threats, and sometimes he would want to win that pawn. Rook g7, rook c7, queen b4, queen f5, just getting and closing in on the king. g3, just creating that space. Queen b6, king g2, and suddenly the rook might join from an unexpected side of the board. Queen e6, that was very nice. Double attacking the rook and the queen. Takes, takes, bishop g5 takes, bishop takes, takes, and the first win of the whole match, as predicted by Leinier Dominguez. All right, let's take a look. How's it going in this game between Yu Yangyi and Jeffery Xiong? This actually looks a little dangerous. We left it off around here, knight e5, but might having decent, slightly better position. a6, g3, queen a7, a3, rook d8. But that's kind of the thing with these isolated pawn positions. If you run out of steam with the side with an isolated pawn, you might as well find yourself in trouble. c5, they repeat once, takes, f5, knight f6 check, king g7, knight h5, and that's what Yu Yangyi is doing. He is going for aggressive play. King h7, but Jeffery has 7 seconds to 18. So we're going to stay here for a bit, even though on the other match, Caruana versus Wei Yi has no to 0 time left. So in fact, let's take a look at that one. And suddenly, suddenly Fabiano took over. And that's why time management matters a lot. And this plan of playing bishop h6 and g5 sort of backfired. f5, queen c2, rook e7, king h1, queen g6, queen f6. And Fabiano is still chilling with 30 seconds versus 7. This position is very uncomfortable for Wei Yi. Rook c7 is a nice little touch. it's difficult to defend these positions as you have no time, and Caruana is putting on a masterclass. Now the b7 pawn is falling. The only thing left is to just stop this attack. Probably taking is best. He goes for h takes, but I don't like that too much because it kind of gives some counterplay. Knight g4, queen f5, maybe knight h2. Knight h2 obviously runs into this idea, so knight d5 obviously, h3, and that's kind of the reason I wouldn't have wanted to take on g4, because now black has easy counterplay on this side of the board. And now we're going to have a tricky endgame. Meanwhile, the Jeffery game ended in a draw. a6. Now this still should be winning, but it's much more difficult with seconds on the clock. a7, check. The king will be able to hide. And there's no more checks. Pawn is promoting, and that is 2 wins with Caruana and Dominguez winning, with Wesley and Jeffery drawing. That is a solid lead. Very good round for the Archbishops, as we see Caruana leave. So a very good game. Let's even take a quick peek at this one between Jeffery Xiong and Yu Yangyi. So knight f6, king g7, knight h5, king h7. And typical of Yu Yangyi, he was known to be a fierce competitor. He never takes a draw. He might repeat, but he only draws if he must. And actually it was kind of a good choice from him. He had to try for a win that could have possibly ended up tying the match, although it did not, as the game ended in a draw. Rook takes, queen e7, rook e1. And even though white has a weak d4 pawn, the king on h7 is a little bit iffy, so Jeffery always has to look out for some tactical tricks or attacking ideas. And with Jeffery having much lower time than Yu Yangyi does, it made sense to continue. Queen g5. This is a typical and a very nice classical plan by Jeffery. He brings the queen over to g5, making sure there is no funny business on the king side. h4, queen g4. Then you have a good old outpost and a weak d4 pawn for your opponent. You should go for the endgame. So queen g4 is very nice. White is actually forced to take, otherwise this pony on h5 would just fall. Takes, rook e4, king g6. Now the knight exchange is forced. h5. Even f5 could be considered sort of blocking that rook in, but it doesn't really matter. Rook e4, king f1, check, king f6, and once the kings reach the middle of the board, it is an even position, and nothing really happens here. The game was agreed to a draw. So an important game, an important hold by Jeffery Xiong, and some important wins for Fabiano. In fact, I am going to take a quick peek of how he won the game. We left it off over here, around here, knight f3, and sometimes being ambitious does backfire. Instead of repeating, which wouldn't be such a terrible result in the position, black has some pressure on these pawns and a potential passer. Queen e4 would make sense, but ambition was a bit too much now. He did go queen g3, and even though this queen looks formidable, rook c1, bishop g5, queen d2, it is sort of out of place. Bishop h6, probably what Wei Yi was calculating, that, oh, for me to get this bishop to h6 would take a lot of time, but if I get my queen to g3 first and then go bishop g5. That would be an easier route. Rook b4, g5, and to be honest with you, I think g5 is the move that is throwing it all away. This bishop actually functions really well there, puts pressure on e3, but g5 closes it all up, and also kind of this queen is getting trapped. And knight h2 was a splendid idea, spotting that this queen is uncomfortable on g3. Also, that knight f1 would just capture that queen. So queen e5, knight g4, queen g7, rook c4. And you can see how the tide turns with 3-4 inaccurate moves and g5 as a big blunder, already from a slightly better to slightly worse to dead lost position occurs if you make a pawn push that just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And after this, Caruana was cruising, queen c2, king h1, just hiding from any dangers, already with Fabi having extra time, Wei Yi just on seconds. Rook c7 was very nice, slowly but surely pressuring on b7. Bishop g7, queen c5, takes, g4, takes. I'm not a big fan. I probably would have considered taking on b7 because at the moment I do not see a way for black to break through in any ways, and if f4 I will always have queen e4 checking and capturing on f4. But Fabi thought otherwise, that taking is fine. F takes, knight takes, queen f5, h3, and the queen comes back in time to defend the king. And also note the unfortunate placement of the king. You can't even set up these perpetual ideas because I would block you with queen h2 and it ends up in a draw. Bishop e5, de, queen b1 check, king h2, queen b4, a6. And usually these games are not that easy to play, but because of the unfortunate placement of the king, this is completely winning. Queen b7, king h6, a2, check, queen g2, and there is no more checks. And again, I am just going to promote. So an important win by Fabi and Leinier, and that means that the archbishops have a lead, a 2-win lead versus the Chinese Pandas. So they will have to, in the upcoming 2 rounds, try to somehow bridge the gap, because in case of a tie, they're going to have a tiebreaker in a ladder format, meaning board 4 is going to face board 4, and if the board 4 keeps on winning, can actually eliminate the whole team, and they will do that until the end, until one team is eliminated. So it's not all lost for the Chinese Pandas. They have a chance to bridge the gap, and if they tie, it will go into a tiebreaker. But as far as I see and as far as I can tell, the Archbishop team, the St. Louis team, has been rocking so far. So I'd expect some coasting in the couple of rounds, although I think the next round will be the critical one. So we're going to go for a short break, and then we'll be back with round 3.
Welcome to the chess capital of the United States. The St. Louis Chess Campus in the heart of the vibrant Central West End has established itself as a premier global destination for chess and is comprised of two unique nonprofit institutions. The Chess Club and Scholastic Center of St. Louis is recognized as the top chess facility in the world and plays host to all major tournaments, including the U.S. Chess Championships and the Sinkfield Cup, one of the strongest chess tournaments globally. Tournaments are broadcast online to more than 150 countries, led by an expert commentary team of grandmasters. The Chess Club is an educational organization committed to promoting the game of chess, with a specific focus on bringing the benefits of chess to children throughout the St. Louis area. Research shows children who play chess exhibit improved analytical skills and increased confidence. The Chess Club is highly engaged with the local community, bringing scholastic chess programs to more than 100 schools, providing hundreds of classes each week. Directly across the street from the Chess Club is the World Chess Hall of Fame. This one-of-a-kind cultural institution invites visitors to experience chess in imaginative ways and is home to the U.S. and World Chess Halls of Fame. Cutting-edge exhibitions feature rare, historic chess artifacts paired with world-class art. Innovative programming explores the intersection of chess, art, and culture. Visitors can enjoy interactive programs designed around the exhibitions and monthly music in the galleries. The World Chess Hall of Fame is nothing you expect and everything you love. 3 different galleries and a premier gift shop highlight the culture, history, and creativity behind the game. Come visit, play chess, leave enriched. To learn more about the St. Louis Chess Campus, visit stlchesscampus.org.
Welcome back for round 3, and we have the pairings for this round. As I heard, let's take a look at the round that hopefully, yeah. So we should be having round in a couple of seconds. And here's the round 3 pairings with Yu Yangyi facing off with white versus Fabiano Caruana. Liren playing Leinier Dominguez, Wesley versus Chao, and Jeffery versus Wei Yi. So this is a crucial round for the Chinese Pandas. They will have to at least bridge the gap, at least win one single game and win this round. If they do not win this round, the possibility of them winning 2 games in the last round is rather slim. So if they want to catch up, they will have to do it shortly this round in round 3. Definitely their last chance. If they think so, if they might, probably their best strategy would be to try to win 1 game at a time at a round and then tie the match. But we shall see what happens. It's not quite clear which is going to happen. No games yet, but I heard that we are waiting for one of the players to be online, and then the round will start. So far it's been looking good for the St. Louis Archbishops. We have a 2-0 lead versus the Chinese Pandas. So the Pandas are on the back foot. They will have to play much more aggressive than they did in the first couple of rounds, where they played solid lines, the London, the Petrov. They will have to fire up the engines and try something more spicy, something with a bit more of a zest. Not considering jalapeno sauce, but something along those lines. But as you've seen, Caruana and the team is ready to take on a challenge. Now, we are still waiting And as far as I can see, that should be Jeffery Xiong taking a seat shortly. So the game is going to start in 15 seconds. So it was a very important step for Leinier to win his game because he did have some scares versus Wei Yi in the first round in the Berlin. He was in the back foot and had to defend really well, but he bounced back with a very important win versus the Chinese player in the O'Kelly variation, where he duly destroyed his opponent with an opposite colored attack. So let's see what we have here. Yes, we have games. So talking about Leinier Dominguez for a second, let's take a look at that game. So Dominguez is actually facing off Liren, and this is a crucial match. If Leinier could stay solid, that would give a step closer for the team to actually clinch the match. H3, this is the good old Juco piano, D5, and that is a very theoretical way of playing by Leinier. He does not mind an E5 weakness, but he says it will be counterbalanced by the pawn on F2. Question is how well prepared Liren is. As far as I know, knight D2, knight E4 is the concept that white is aiming for in these type of structures, not only chasing this bishop away, but also setting up some knight G5 ideas. Bishop E6, it doesn't actually blunder a pawn. In case you take, you might recall bishop F2, king takes, and queen F6 check, winning the rook on E5. So I wasn't really joking when I said that E5 pawn weakness is compensated by that F2 pawn weakness. C3, this is a little bit more circumspect, but after, let's say, queen D6, it should be more or less tenable for black. All right, so let's take a look at Fabiano's game. Fabiano is actually facing off a solid queen's gambit with black. He goes for a6, and c5 suddenly turns into a Slav and exchange Slav CB, bishop f4, bishop d6, which means that he's going to have, again, a quite bad bishop, but that is the only weakness he has in the position. e3, castles, knight d7, queen b3, rook c8, rook c2, rook c1, and with accurate play, this should lead to nothing more than a draw. One of the things that white can aim for in these type of positions is to target the b and a pawns, go a4, either prepare something like queen a3, so you can have a target on b6, or go a4, knight a2, and queen b4, and after the exchange of queens, target the a6 pawn. So some sort of a maneuver of knight a2 and knight b4. b5, trying to gain space, and in case of a4, you can already go b4 and a5, just closing off all the play for white. So it makes sense for Yu Yangyi to just go a3 and then do whatever I said earlier, just in a smaller scale instead of the a4 idea. However, one of the things that Yu Yangyi will have to be wary about is a potential maneuver of knight b6, knight c4, which can become annoying, or a break with e5. Oftentimes, you can accept the fact that you'll get an isolated pawn because by in itself, an isolated pawn does not lose you the game. In any case, the position is around even. Let's take a look at what Wesley is about. He is playing a classical line, an open Sicilian. And as I told you, the China Pandas know that this is their last chance to bounce back. So Li Chao goes all in and tries to play the Najdorf. However, Wesley goes with this rare f3 move, which is an interesting line, leading for more these Maróczy type of positions, which is very much in Wesley's style. Takes, bishop d3, takes. And there's lots of exchanges, and even though there's a pawn weakness on d5, White's king isn't the most safe. Bishop d6, h3, rook e8, bishop d4. And bishop c5 is a move that I wouldn't really say is the best. Li Chao is actually exchanging pieces when he should be keeping them on the board. Takes, queen f2. And after an exchange on f2, this will be a simple game where only Wesley can win, draw being the other result possible. So we already looked at all three boards, but we haven't looked at the fourth between Jeffery Xiong and Wei Yi, between the two youngsters. Knight f6. So as far as I can see, Wei Yi is trying to be solid, plays the semi-tarash that's been quite popular these days in the candidates and in top events. Knight f3, castles still, the main variation, b5, bishop d3, queen c7, a4. And Jeffery is playing it more of a positional style. He doesn't go all out, which they usually do. Some people prefer going e5 and going for direct attack against the king, which is definitely playable. He goes for something more reserved. ba, I think there's some ideas connected with queen a2 and trying to win the a pawn, and hoping to use the fact that black has some weak pawns on a6 and c5. Actually a good choice by Jeffery, because in this scenario, again, he will have chances to push without really being in any danger of losing. So queen a2 is one of the things that I would consider. However, as clumsy as it looks, knight b6 might be an issue defending the a4 pawn. He goes d5. An interesting choice. So if takes, that would really work in Jeffery's favor, because in that case, knight f6, if Jeffery manages to push the pawn to c4, he is going to have a superior position. And I think e takes d5 wasn't the best try by Wei Yi, and after c4, this will definitely be slightly more pleasant for Jeffery. Sort of knight f6, c4, and sooner or later the a pawn, like the a4 pawn, is going to fall, and after that White is just going to enjoy a slight advantage. So again, let's take a look at the other games. This game between Caruana and Yu Yangyi. As predicted, mass exchanges of the rooks. Now, this might surprise you. It doesn't really mean it's a draw, because there's still some targets on the queen side, so Fabiano still has to be careful. And if you've noticed, in all four of these games, they're trying to get a position where they risk little, yet they have a chance to fight for an advantage. And I think this type of play kind of favors the team of the archbishops, as any draw is just getting us closer to victory. Queen d6. So Fabiano played queen d6 just to stop this queen from infiltrating through the dark squares. However, that kind of reminds me, what if White actually goes queen c3 or queen c2, setting up ideas of queen c5. Knight f4. That's sort of a strange idea. I don't quite get it. Maybe he's planning to get the bishop away, go knight d3, and then plant another knight on c5, targeting the a6 pawn and the bishop on b7. However, I think knight d7 will be an option just to get rid of the e5 knight, and you don't have f4 anymore because your knight is in the way. So let's say knight d7, knight d7, knight d7, and with every exchange I feel that any sort of advantage that Yu Yangyi has is dissipating. Let's take another look back in this game. We left it off over here on queen f2, and again here you see that the moves are dictated by the result. Chao plays d4. He needs to keep on pieces on the board, otherwise they'll be just far too behind. Knight e4, but Wesley is not against exchanging. Also, he has a clearer view on the d-pawn. Rook b8, rook d1, rook d8, bishop takes h7, kaboom! Missing this nice little tactical shot of queen h4, queen d8, king f8, bishop e4, bishop b7, rook c1, and if Wesley wraps this up, that would be a 3-0 lead, which is nearly unsurmountable. b3, queen f6, bishop c4. Slowly but surely, Wesley is doing the technical task. Once you're up a pawn, it's time for you to exchange. He could have also considered trying to infiltrate on the 7th rank and push that way, but he just wants to make sure that everything's under control. a5. That's a strange decision. I do not see a reason why queen takes d4 isn't good here. I did not pay attention, but maybe it wasn't just me scratching my head. Might have been Wesley as well. Queen d4, and probably we had exactly the same thoughts. I do not understand why black gave up that d4 pawn. Maybe just giving up on the game. And with 2 pawns up, this should be relatively simple for Wesley's caliber to convert. Even if black would start exchanging, at the end of the day, I would have a passed c-pawn promoted by my rook. And in that case, it's just game over. Not only do I have that passer, I have a majority on the king side with 3 versus 2, and that should be an easy win. So that would mean that this will be 3-0 pretty soon. So let's take a look at this game between Jeffery and Wei Yi. So far it's looking quite good for the archbishops, as they have quite a nice position in this game. Jeffery has a better position, putting pressure, having a much better structure, and these pawns are just weak. While Caruana might be slightly bit worse, but not by a whole bunch. Bishop b2. Is there any active play that Jeffery could look for? I mean, Wei Yi could look for possibly something like rook e8, queen c2, and knight e4. Or maybe rook a8 and knight e4 and f5. That's the best shot that Wei Yi has. Trying to muddy waters, just give up the a pawns and hope for the attack. Rook e8, yep. And Wei Yi knows that he has to go all in. Knight e4, f5, and this might actually be much worse than it looks for white, with most of the pieces being on the queen side. Knight e4, knight e4, knight h4, trying to stop f5 breaks, and also hitting that g6 bishop. Even that looks uncomfortable. We'll come back to this game. Which one haven't we looked at? We haven't looked at this game between Leinier and Liren. We left it off over here at this position. Played bishop b6, bishop b3, rook e8. So this knight e5 never works, as we talked about before, because of bishop f2, king takes f2, and knight e5 tricks. Bishop c5, knight c4, f6, d4. And even though black managed to stabilize the position, it came with the concession of setting up some of these tricks. Bishop f8, bishop d2, d7, a6, knight d3, bishop f7, bishop a4, and a bishop b3. Although, as far as I can see, Leinier has consolidated and that d-pawn looks more weak than strong. And it's actually quite difficult to get close to Leinier's king. If they take, he will take with the queen, and with no direct pressure against the c-pawn, it is Leinier who's calling the shots and not Liren. So that in mind, so far this round looks quite balanced, with Wei Yi having some chances to play for a win. Wesley is completely winning, so in best case scenario for the Pandas it's 1-1, but that is still up in the air and Jeffrey's game is still pending. But I do think that Wesley is going to notch that game. This game I feel that Dominguez is doing fine. He's doing fine on the clock as well. He has 3 minutes versus 2. Let's take a look at Caruana's game. So we left it off over here on knight f4. He did go knight c4. He didn't go knight d7. Queen c3, g6, h3, queen b8, b3, takes. But isn't that a pawn? That looks like a free pawn. And again, that was kind of the issue with this knight f4 move. You never ever have that f4 move again, which is a problem. a4, ba, knight e5, bishop f1, knight c4. Although with this bishop still being closed in, Yu Yangyi might have some fighting chances, but this does look quite good for Caruana with up an extra pawn. Only thing that I would be a little bit concerned with is the king on g8, because it is sort of lonesome. Something like queen f6 can be irritating. However, in that case, maybe you can go queen e5, just chase the queen away. But that in mind, it seems to me that this round is definitely in the Archbishop's way. If Fabiano was to win this game, that would just be the nail in the coffin for the Pandas. Queen d6. And again, I don't quite like this knight move to d3. Probably trying to consolidate with f4, but I don't quite believe that. e5 seems to be a logical move, followed by f6. And once he consolidates the center, Fabi should be coasting. All right, let's take a look at Wesley's game. Wesley's up a pawn. Nothing spectacular has happened. It's been quite simple. Let's take a look what happened earlier on, because let's see some fine technique from Wesley. Bishop c4 actually took on c4, queen b6, king h1. So Wesley's not going and taking chances. He's up plenty of pawns. He needs no risks. Queen c5. Any rook endgame would be winning. So Chao obviously avoids it. f4, rook e1. Basically offering queen exchanges wherever he goes. And Chao quietly denying all of them. d5, queen e5, rook takes, rook a5, basically trading off the b pawn for the a pawn. And this is the moment it's starting to get very critical for Li Chao. Once this rook either goes to the other side and starts bothering the king, or you can start pushing. But it's actually a matter of style. Wesley prefers the technical move of a5 instead of rook b4, rook g5, which probably also works and might have forced black to be very precise in defense and force an exchange, which would lead win the game. However, a5 is thematic and just make sure that everything's defended. Rook d8. So you can start pushing the pawn up and creating weaknesses. Or maybe go rook c5, rook c7, trying to take a hold of that. He goes rook b6, saying, I do not see your plan. Tell me more about your ideas. Okay. Apologies. So back to the game, we have queen g3 being played there, and oh, wrong game. Queen g3 played, rook d5, and I do not like what Wesley is doing. He's actually trying to go for an attack when he was mostly playing on the queen side. So even here with king h7, I would have preferred something like h4, h5, and h6 and just provoke some weaknesses. Queen g3 seems a little indecisive. Not that he is not still in a better position, obviously he is, but it's just getting a bit more complicated than it should be. Maybe he can go check, go queen b4, and set up rook b8 ideas. Yep, queen h4. Queen f4, same idea, just blocking off any checks. And if you would take, then I have rook b8 and queen h4, or just queen f7. If queen takes, I check and take on f7. But again, rook takes a5 here, king h7. Where is the idea? Maybe queen e4 check, trying to probe. Yeah, there queen e4, because here king g6 and you can't really win there. Rook f8, f6, f6 I guess you can go queen e4 again, f5, and then queen e8, king g6, but that move just looks too much fun. King f6. I do not understand what Li Chao is doing, but probably he thinks this is the best practical chance out here. Queen c6, king g5, h4, just luring that king out in the open. He goes f4. After takes, I can go check and rook f7, and then Wesley is just going to clinch. Possibly, Li Chao is just going to resign after check and rook f7. Yep, rook f7 won, because queen f7, queen f3 check, and you win the game. Very important win by Wesley, and that actually means that there's a big lead going on. Bishop d3. So far in this game, Fabiano made a draw, which is still beneficial for the team. So let's take a look at this one, which again turned in Jeffery's favor. He will always be able to give up this bishop, but after this takes this pawn. He can never take, promote, and that is probably the end of it all for the Chinese team, with so many wins for the Archbishops. This is near to guarantee, and Jeffery wins, and this is a near guarantee that the Archbishops are through to the final. Let's take a look what happened. We've seen most all the other games. Okay. Let me see. Refresh. So this was basically a clincher, with the Archbishops clinching the third round, and with only one round left, that's unlikely that the Chinese Pandas can actually make a comeback, unless it's a heroic comeback, and in that case they have a little hope. However, it's pretty slim. So let's take a quick look at what we missed. We missed it around g4, bishop g6, bishop b2, rook e8, queen c2, and knight d7 or knight e4. Both seem legit. Knight e4 is a move that's good. Rook e1, queen b7. f5 doesn't really work because of gf, and there's pressure on this knight. So queen b7 was played, knight h4. And here Wei Yi goes for a tactical sequence with knight takes f2, which is quite nice. If you take with the king, I can take on d3, queen d3, and this bishop on b2 is hanging. So Jeffery went for something different. Knight g6, knight d3. Here there was a complicated line that was missed by Wei Yi. He should have taken on h3, king g2, and rook e1. And after that he has a very, very strong attack after f takes g. But he decided, oh, it jumped on me. Decided to go knight d3 instead, knight f8, rook e1, knight e1, takes, bishop g7. And even though black is up a piece, this king is sort of vulnerable and in big time trouble. Jeffery actually manages to turn the tide around. King e7, queen e4 check, queen takes e1. And even though black has this a-pawn, the future is looking bright for Jeffery, as these h-pawns, h and g pawn, can be quite dangerous if it starts running. Queen b3, queen f2, queen b1 check, queen e4, takes, and suddenly a position that looked really good for Wei Yi turns into a terrible one, because Jeffery is in time to stop the a-pawn from marching. Takes, bishop h8. You can't capture that bishop, surprisingly. d6. You will have to come back to capture this guy. Bishop g7, bishop f8. And with these pawns blocked on a6 and c5, it's a matter of technique by Jeffery Xiong. g5, c5, c6, king a4. And after the king walks all over to f3, it's game, set, match. And we'll be back shortly with round 4 of the match.
Welcome to the chess capital of the United States. The St. Louis Chess Campus in the heart of the vibrant Central West End has established itself as a premier global destination for chess and is comprised of two unique nonprofit institutions. The Chess Club and Scholastic Center of St. Louis is recognized as the top chess facility in the world and plays host to all major tournaments, including the U.S. Chess Championships and the Sinkfield Cup, one of the strongest chess tournaments globally. Tournaments are broadcast online to more than 150 countries, led by an expert commentary team of grandmasters. The Chess Club is an educational organization committed to promoting the game of chess, with a specific focus on bringing the benefits of chess to children throughout the St. Louis area. Research shows children who play chess exhibit improved analytical skills and increased confidence. The Chess Club is highly engaged with the local community, bringing scholastic chess programs to more than 100 schools, providing hundreds of classes each week. Directly across the street from the Chess Club is the World Chess Hall of Fame. This one-of-a-kind cultural institution invites visitors to experience chess in imaginative ways and is home to the U.S. and World Chess Halls of Fame. Cutting-edge exhibitions feature rare, historic chess artifacts paired with world-class art. Innovative programming explores the intersection of chess, art, and culture. Visitors can enjoy interactive programs designed around the exhibitions and monthly music in the galleries. The World Chess Hall of Fame is nothing you expect and everything you love. 3 different galleries and a premier gift shop highlight the culture, history, and creativity behind the game. Come visit, play chess, leave enriched. To learn more about the St. Louis Chess Campus, visit stlchesscampus.org.
St. Louis University is celebrating its 200th anniversary. Offering world-class education in the heart of St. Louis, SLU attracts students and professors from around the globe. In 2015, SLU partnered with the St. Louis Chess Club to start a top-tiered collegiate chess team. On the very first year of the team's inception, SLU obtained second best university at the Pan American Intercollegiate Chess Championships. Higher purpose, greater good. St. Louis University.
Hello and welcome back for round 4 of the Pro Chess League match between the Chinese Pandas and the St. Louis Archbishops, who are leading with 8-4 with big wins in the previous round by Jeffery Xiong and Wesley So. Excuse me. And that would mean that the Chinese Pandas will have to go 4-0 just to tie the match. But in case that miracle would happen, that would actually lead into a tiebreak between those four warriors and the Chinese Pandas. But as far as I could see, this doesn't look like the match for the Chinese team. And as you might have noticed, most of the players are quite relaxed. So in the last round, Fabiano Caruana is going to face off with Liren. So board number 1 versus board number 1, board number 2 versus number 2, etc., etc. So Leinier is playing Yu Yangyi, Wei Yi playing Wesley, and Chao is playing Jeffery Xiong on the last board, with the slight but substantial advantage of ratings should tell, and that should favor the archbishops. And let us see what we have here. No cat cam yet, sadly, but hopefully we will see one on Sundays. Have no confirmation yet, but if we get enough fan mails, we might see Wesley's cat make a return to the internet. They're getting ready for the round to start. And if I recall correctly, Jeffery was fist bumping at the end of his game, realizing that game was very crucial, and that might have been the one sealing that this game must be 4-0 for the Chinese team, otherwise they are eliminated. Meanwhile, we're waiting for this game. Let's take a look at the other game that's going to happen today between the Armenian Eagles and the Canadian Chess Bros. That's going to happen in an hour after the match between the St. Louis Archbishops and the Chinese Pandas. So if you want some more chess action, then feel free to tune in for that one as well, and on chess.com. And then you will be able to see who the St. Louis Archbishops is going to face next round, either the Canadian team or the Armenian one. So that's going to be a very interesting match, with Chess Bros having likes of Anish Agiri, Eric Hansen, the Chess Bra himself, and the whole Armenian team, who's probably one of the most well organized, and as far as I know, they always congregate in one space to play their matches, or they did before in the preseason. So you can see that the Chess Bros facing the Armenian Eagles, so that's number 1 facing number 2. And so the Armenian Eagles actually had an easy routing versus the Marshalls, while the Chess Bros faced off with the Chicago Wind with the same exact result. Now, if you want a little bit of a prediction, I would say that the Chess Bros are likely to be the favorites with higher ratings, but the Armenians are an enthusiastic group of people, and I wouldn't be surprised if there would be an upset brewing there. So again, if you are hungry for more chess games after this match, do check it out on chess.com. That's going to happen in an hour. And meanwhile, we have our first game between Jeffery Xiong and Chao. And you can see just from the opening that they're going for something offbeat. So Li Chao immediately chose a rather solid line as white, keeping as many pieces on the board. As we talked about it, the Chinese team does need to score 4-0 to tie the match, so it is just logical for them to keep as many pieces on the board as possible. So this is actually a reversed Philidor. In fact, bishop c5 is kind of a nice move. However, often it gets attacked, so I'm not 100% sure if it's the best choice here. But obviously, black hasn't committed any chess sins to really speak of any white advantage. Let's take another look on Wesley's board. Wesley is facing the non-standard Larsen variation, and here Wesley comes up with queen e7, which is a rare line. Usually you see the equally weird-looking bishop d6. He went for queen e7, knight c3, a6, bishop c4. g6 would come to mind just to start going over defending the e5 pawn and then putting the king into safety. But again, this kind of shows that the pandas are looking for a full-blown fight on each and every board. Going on to Leinier Dominguez and Yu Yangyi, we see the good old Petrov, which actually surprises me. Yes, it is not a bad opening, but going for a win with the Petrov, that is not likely to help the cause. And with this line that Leinier plays, he gets a little bit of an advantage and a little bit of a push. And this is quite looking good for Leinier. Could even consider something like b3, bishop b2. Might be a little bit offbeat and not necessarily the more usual way of playing, but I would rather want to get that bishop to better position if I can. Or maybe something like bishop b5 can be on the cards just to try to ruin black's structure, and after that knight e5, exchanging some more pieces and putting pressure on Yu Yangyi. But in any case, this has to be slightly better for Leinier Dominguez. He played c3, castles, and I wonder if he's going to go queen c2 or capturing on g6 immediately. In any case, let's take a final look on the game between Caruana and Ding Liren. So here we see a good old g3 fianchetto, King's Indian. Kind of a rarity from Fabiano, as Fabiano usually plays 1e4 and not d4 systems. But you never really know with super grandmasters, they can play whatever, whenever, and whatever they like. Castles a6, bishop g5, and this is some sort of a sideline. I've seen rook e1, rook b1, b4, but this is actually kind of comfortable as well. Bishop f4, rook b8, rook c1, sort of x-raying the knight on c6 and trying to put pressure that way. b5, takes, takes, d5, e5, counter-attacking, de, bishop e6. And it's kind of strange. These positions are kind of strange because there's a knight fleeting on c6, but for one reason or another, it's kind of difficult to get close to it. And oftentimes you would have this knee-jerk reaction of playing a3, but in that case, there would be b4. Knight b5 is not a move that I like too much, because black can take on b5, take on b2, and the a2 pawn is going to be weakened. So that actually doesn't quite look that great for Fabi, if I can tell. But okay, let's go back to the Jeffery game, how that is going. Queen c2, we basically have a reversed Philidor. d4 takes, bishop g4 takes, and it's sort of going according to the plans of Jeffery. At the end of the day, if Jeffery manages to put a piece on on d4, he is just going to have a superior position. Not to talk about the fact that he can also think about maneuvering the knight to e6 and target that d4 square that way. So far looks quite comfortable for Jeffery. Knight d4 might be a little early though, because white just is in time to exchange all those pieces off. Rook d8, which doesn't really threaten a whole bunch, because if you ever go knight d4, I take the a5 pawn. A little bit more worried about rook b1 and b4, b5. That looks a little bit annoying. But again, hindsight 2020, I can go knight g4, target the f2 pawn, and any sort of repetition is in favor of black, as we know the match result so far. So this is looking good for Jeffery Xiong, not so much for Caruana. What's going on in Wesley's game? So we left it off over here with bishop c4, g6, h4, h5, knight f3, bishop g7, knight g5. And this is the typical mess that probably Wei Yi was hoping for. But as far as I can see, it's not that easy to break through with g4. Then I can always capture. But saying that, it's not something that is standard. So basically anything can happen in this game. Castles, maybe knight d5 would make sense. Takes, bishop takes d5. d6. And white has some fighting chances, but an advantage, I think that would be a bit too much. That bishop on b2 isn't as good as it should be in the Larsen. It's actually blocked by the knight. It's not that easy to make headways here. However, I do think that something like knight d5 and f3, g4 should be Wei Yi's plan, going for broke, because it's really a win that will count in this scenario. So let's move on from here to Leinier and see what's going on in that game. So we left it off over here with queen d2, bishop g6, and instead of bishop b5, Leinier chose the more circumspect move of c3, castles, queen c2, queen d7, bishop f4, rook e8, rook e2, bishop f8, and white is just going to do the slow poke, doubling on the e file and having that extra space and just enjoying that minute advantage of owning the file. And to be honest with you, this should be rather holdable for Yu Yangyi, but can you win it? That is doubtful. That is doubtful if you have any chance to turn this around and make this from a draw to a win. Not impossible, but unlikely. Queen e2, again, controlling that square, and I'm kind of shocked not to see bishop takes d3 happen. I feel that Yu Yangyi is trying to be as defensive as possible. I guess takes and h3 makes sense, with black really not having any active ideas. So let's go back, as we went all around, to Caruana's game, if he actually found some ways to sort of neutralize the play of Ding's. So we left it off here with rook takes b2, queen c1, rook a2, rook takes c7. So he's actually trying to vacuum off the pawns of the board But that only means that white might not be worse or lost, but there's no advantage in this position. g5, bishop e3, knight d5, rook c6. And my main question is, what happens if white actually faces rook takes e2? Rook e2, maybe bishop d2, trying to trap that rook. That's one of the ideas possible. Or something like knight e3, queen e3, bishop d5, and then go rook e8, and threaten rook takes e2. In both cases, I kind of feel it's black who's dominating a little bit. But it's not that easy because the advantage is on one side of the board. So if rook takes e2, I sort of think bishop d2, and this rook is kind of trapped. And I don't quite see how black can untangle. Also knight e3, queen takes, bishop d5 can lead to an advantage. So white is a little bit behind, but not that the fight is over. Black still has some work to do to actually prove his advantage. So let's see what's up with Jeffery's game. Oh, and some fireworks in Jeffery's game. Let's head on over there. We left it off over here. Couldn't really go rook b1 because of knight g4. Played h3. And here comes the big knight slaloming. Knight e5, knight f4. Takes, boom, on h3. And this is a big problem, because if you take, I check you, I can take the repetition and clinch the match, or just check you until you have to go back to h1, and a rook rova to h6 via d6 is going to be decisive. So not only does Jeffery have at least a draw, he can even go for more, and why not when you are winning. Knight f2, takes, and queen h6 is deadly, so black really doesn't have any time to take the exchange even, because it's mate on h5. Check and mate on h5. Bishop g4 keeps on fighting like a good team player, but it really shouldn't help that much. Also, Jeffery can just take on c6, and in case of bishop g7, just play queen g6, attacking the bishop on g4 and g7. This is basically the decisive game. So let's stick to this one and see how Xiong clinches it. White is sort of agonizing, and what's sad enough, you can't really defend this guy either. If you go rook d1, I might be able just to take on e4 anyways, because if you capture, I have this long range move you've got to block, and that guy is not defended. Rook d3, which is also winning. You can't quite capture the bishop, this one's hanging. If you go here, I just go queen g6, and everything's under control. And Jeffery is just up the exchange. Bishop f5, trying to set up some counter threats. Actually, I'm starting to wonder if there's some sacrifices, but the f2 is hanging, so why leaves that there. So you could go bishop g3, just keeping this king smothered over there. Yep, bishop g3. Excuse me. And there's some potential threats of doubling anyways. Bishop g3, rook d8 is coming, rook d1. So this is just completely winning for Jeffery. You can try bishop h8, but I always have queen h6 check with a big advantage. Rook d8, just setting up this rook d1. And because of these squares being covered, black is going to face some issues. Rook d1, that's a back rank mate that is hard to deal with. You still have to do something with your bishop. If you move it away, then you'll face rook d1, and your queen is overworked. You can't defend the f1 rook and the bishop on f6. In that case, it leads to a loss. Queen a1, trying to juggle two things at a time, which never ends in any way good. Now, it's never too late to mess up. Queen c2 would run into bishop h8, and then it would get murky, might even be just lost. So some precision is still required from Jeffery to actually clinch it. Maybe something like queen d6, threatening rook d1. Maybe queen d6, then e5. With queen d6, e5, something like queen d4, and queen h4 is on the button. If you take, I just checkmate you with my queen. So what black really wants to set up is rook d1, exchange everything, and then there's the back rank mate. Yep, queen d6, e5, and queen d4. If they take, then queen h4. If you take, I check, checkmate. If you take, I'll just take, and I'm up the exchange. And apart from being up the exchange, rook d1 is winning. So there might be one last tricks. Meanwhile, Leinier did agree to a draw. So officially, the match has been won by the archbishops. So that means that's 8.5, 4. There's no way of catching. Meanwhile, Wesley also won, so it's 9.5 right now. And this will be the 10th game point for the archbishops. We're getting there. We're getting there. We're waiting for the 10th. And that'll be a clincher. e6. Still trying. Still trying. But just a simple takes. Yeah, takes is good. Because if you take the queen from the dead, will still come back to haunt Li Chao. And that'll be good enough for the win. Yep, takes. Jeffery is precise to the max, and Jeffery pushes the score up to the 10th. So 10.5, 4, and we still have one last game pending between Fabiano Caruana and Liren, but already the archbishops have won the match. So this is the last game, still pending. The result won't change. However, if we still care there'll be some issues on the second rank. So Fabi does have to be careful not to lose this one. And that will mean that the St. Louis Archbishops are going to be slated for the final. The final, and if you want to know who they're facing, that's going to be in a different match in an hour. Okay, rook b2, but after knight d4, this is more or less even. There's not much play left for Ding. He has a slight bit of an advantage because this rook is strong enough and this rook is passive, but objectively it shouldn't be more than a draw. h4. King g6, just trying to bring the king up the board. Rook d3. King h5, trying to win the pawn. Rook e3 and just activating the rook. And once Fabi gets the d5 pawn, it's a draw. Rook e5, possibly rook b5 will be forced defending that square. But then this king is a little bit offsides. Like pieces do look too passive to actually do any damage to Fabi's position. In fact, rook b5, bishop f3 is a neat little mating pattern that you rarely see. Yep, and after bishop f3, it's either you go bishop g4, and which peters into a draw, or you don't play bishop g4, but in that case you get mated. I mean, bishop d5 is also good enough, both cases leading to a draw. Bishop takes, f takes, king g5, and the match ends with Fabi drawing with Ding Liren, and St. Louis wins with 11-5. A solid performance by Fabiano and the team. They won when it mattered. With the first round that was a little bit dodgy and was back and forth, on the second and third rounds they clinched it. Second round, that 2-0 was very important just to get in the groove of the match. But this means that St. Louis goes on to the final. Talking about the final, if you are interested to know what you're going to see, you should check out the Chess Bros versus the Armenian Eagles match that's going to happen in an hour. And then you'll find out who the St. Louis Archbishops is going to face in the finals. That will be happening on Sunday, September 27th. Probably around the same time as today. So with that, I thank you for watching and see you on Sunday.